The galactic overlords were known throughout the cosmos for their unshakable grip on power. Ruling over vast star systems, they had mastered the art of dominance through fear and technological supremacy. Their empire thrived on subjugation, with species far and wide bowing to their seemingly invincible military might. No one dared to challenge their reign. In the hierarchy of the galaxy, humanity was little more than an afterthought, a primitive species that had yet to prove themselves worthy of notice. To the overlords, humans were insignificant. In their view, they occupied the lowest rung of the galactic ladder, incapable of developing anything remotely threatening to the established order. The overlords had kept their watchful eye on Earth, occasionally checking in on the advancements of this backwater species. They saw nothing that concerned them. Technologically inferior, resource-starved, and politically divided, humanity posed no threat to the overlords' rule. That belief was shattered in an instant. In the heart of the overlords' command centers, where everything operated with mechanical precision, their monitoring systems suddenly flared with warning signals. A massive object had breached their heavily fortified space. At first, disbelief rippled through the control rooms. It was impossible for anything to have gotten through their defenses unnoticed. But as the screens showed the undeniable truth, panic erupted. A ship, unlike anything they had ever seen, hovered ominously in the outer rim of their territory. It dwarfed even the Overlord's largest warships. Its dark, sleek structure radiated an aura of power, and its energy signature was off the charts. The markings on the hull were unmistakable. This was a human dreadnought. A vessel of war, carrying untold destruction. For the first time in countless cycles, fear gripped the overlords. How had this human warship appeared without warning? Their advanced surveillance networks had failed to detect its approach. The dreadnought seemed to have materialized out of thin air. This was not the human race they had grown accustomed to underestimating. Somehow, against all odds, humanity had developed technology that could outsmart and outmaneuver the galaxy's most powerful empire. The overlords scrambled to understand the situation. The dreadnought's size alone was enough to induce shock, but it was its stealth capabilities that truly disturbed them. How could a species that had once struggled with basic space travel now possess the ability to slip past their defenses? It was clear that humanity had progressed far beyond what the overlords had believed possible. This realization sent waves of anxiety through their ranks. At the helm of the dreadnought stood Commander Steele, a figure whose name was soon to become legend. Steele was not just any captain. He was known for his brilliance in battle, a man forged in the fires of countless conflicts. His reputation as a tactical genius was well-earned, but it was his calm under pressure that truly set him apart. As he gazed out at the Overlord's fleet, his expression remained unreadable. To him, this was just another mission, one that he was certain would end in victory. The Overlord's intelligence teams worked frantically, pulling up whatever data they had on Steele and his ship. What they found only deepened their dread. Humanity's military power had been grossly underestimated. In secret, they had been preparing, advancing, and perfecting their technologies. The Dreadnought was the pinnacle of these efforts, a weapon designed not just to defend Earth, but to dominate any who dared to threaten it. While the Overlords debated their next move, Steele remained patient. His ship held its position, looming over the Overlord fleet like a predator watching its prey. There was no need to rush. He knew that the mere presence of the Dreadnought was enough to cause chaos among their ranks. They were panicking, unsure of whether to engage or retreat. Steele had seen it all before, overconfident rulers suddenly forced to reckon with a foe they had dismissed. Inside the Overlord command chamber, voices clashed as their leaders struggled to agree on a course of action. Some argued for immediate engagement, confident that their overwhelming numbers would crush the human vessel. Others, more cautious, suggested retreating to regroup. But there was one thing they all agreed on: they could not allow humanity to stand unchallenged. If the Dreadnought was any indication of human progress, the Overlords faced a far more dangerous threat than they had ever imagined. Commander Steele watched the chaos unfold from his command center. His crew awaited his orders, ready to strike. But Steele wasn't in a hurry. He understood the power of fear. Let the Overlords squirm. Let them see the inevitable doom creeping towards them. His ship was more than just a weapon, it was a message. Humanity would no longer be trifled with. As the Overlords' debate reached a fever pitch, Steele made his move. He opened a communication channel, his voice cold and unyielding as it echoed across the Overlords' fleet. His message was simple, but its impact was devastating. You should have never provoked us. The transmission cut off, leaving the Overlords in stunned silence. The gravity of the situation settled in. They had poked a sleeping giant, and now they faced the consequences. What was once a routine show of dominance had turned into a nightmare, one that they could not wake from. The Dreadnought, silent and imposing, remained in position, a looming reminder that humanity had risen, and they were no longer the prey. The Overlords, for the first time in their long reign, were forced to confront a reality they had never anticipated. The universe had changed, and humanity was ready to claim its place at the top. The Overlords' response was immediate, yet tinged with an undercurrent of fear that none dared admit openly. Their pride wouldn't allow them to acknowledge the true magnitude of the threat, but there was no denying the reality that now faced them. A human dreadnought, something beyond their worst calculations, was sitting in their territory. It had appeared without warning, bypassed their impenetrable defenses, and was now a looming menace that required a decisive counteraction. Their elite fleets were mobilized in record time, swarms of warships and squadrons of fighter crafts surging through space, converging on the human vessel. These were ships designed to wipe out entire planetary systems, built with the most advanced weaponry the Overlords had at their disposal. The generals overseeing the fleets spoke with bravado, insisting they would crush the humans. But the tension in their voices betrayed them. This time was different, and everyone knew it. For all their technological superiority, they were unsure if it would be enough. Intelligence officers scrambled to piece together data on the human advancements. Reports poured in, but the information was disjointed and incomplete. Humanity had hidden their rise well, evolving quietly under the radar. How had they progressed so far in so little time? The Overlords, so used to having an overwhelming edge, were now forced to consider that they may have severely underestimated their enemy. The fleets approached the Dreadnought, forming a massive wall of firepower. To the outside observer, it appeared to be an insurmountable force, one that had brought countless worlds to their knees. But there was no tremor of fear from the human side. Steele, commanding from within the Dreadnought, calmly observed the Overlord's positioning. He didn't need grand displays of power or rhetoric. His ship spoke for itself, its capabilities far beyond anything the Overlords had faced before. Steele's first order came with the precision of a seasoned tactician. His crew, well-trained and efficient, responded instantly. The Dreadnought moved with an elegance that belied its massive size, avoiding the initial barrage of fire from the Overlord's ships with ease. Then, in a series of calculated maneuvers, it retaliated. The Dreadnought's weapons activated, and the Overlords were given their first taste of its power. Several of their ships were obliterated in seconds, reduced to nothing more than debris floating in the cold vacuum of space. Panic began to ripple through the Overlords' ranks. How could a single ship inflict such devastation so quickly? Communications between their commanders started to break down. The once confident voices of their generals grew frantic as they realized they were losing control of the situation. Steele, observing this descent into chaos, knew he had them where he wanted. He ordered his crew to hold back, allowing the Overlords to stew in their confusion and fear. This was psychological warfare at its finest. Steele's ship began sending out cryptic messages, short, vague transmissions designed to heighten the Overlords' anxiety. There was no clear threat in the words, but the implications were terrifying. The Overlords, unaccustomed to feeling vulnerable, found themselves paralyzed by indecision. Should they retreat, or press the attack? Every moment they spent deliberating gave Steele more control, allowing him to pick off their ships one by one with terrifying precision. The Overlords, for all their advanced technology and ruthless dominance, had never faced an enemy like this. They had always been the ones instilling fear, not receiving it. Now, with every ship that vanished under the Dreadnought's guns, their morale sank further. This was not the way things were supposed to go. They were the overlords of the galaxy, and yet here they were, being outmatched by a species they had once dismissed as nothing more than primitives. In their desperation, the overlords deployed their most powerful warship, a flagship that had been their ace in countless conquests. This vessel had the capability to destroy entire planets, and it represented the pinnacle of their military engineering. Surely, this would be enough to turn the tide. The generals clung to this hope, rallying their remaining forces around the flagship as it prepared to engage the human Dreadnought. Steele, however, remained unfazed. He had anticipated this move. His crew, accustomed to his calm in the face of overwhelming odds, waited for his next order. They knew that the Overlord's flagship, no matter how imposing it seemed, was just another target to be dealt with. The Dreadnought adjusted its position, and within moments, the battle resumed. The Overlords threw everything they had at the Dreadnought, a final, desperate attempt to overwhelm the human ship. Missiles, energy weapons, and wave after wave of fighters were unleashed in a coordinated assault. But the Dreadnought's defenses held firm, its shields absorbing the brunt of the attack. Steele watched as the Overlord's flagship moved into position, preparing to fire its most powerful weapon. He allowed them to believe, for just a moment, that they had a chance. Then, with chilling precision, he gave the command. The Dreadnought's weapons activated once more, but this time, they unleashed a level of firepower that far surpassed anything the Overlords had witnessed before. A single shot from the Dreadnought's main cannon was all it took. The Overlord's flagship, the pride of their fleet, disintegrated in an instant. The destruction was so sudden, so absolute, that it took a moment for the Overlords to comprehend what had just happened. Their most powerful warship, the vessel they had believed could turn the battle in their favor, was gone. With it, any remaining hope of victory vanished. The Overlords' fleets, already decimated, began to fall apart. Their commanders, now fully gripped by fear, ordered a retreat. But it was too late. The Dreadnought had already crippled their forces beyond repair. As the remnants of the Overlord fleet scattered, Steele watched in silence. He knew the battle was won. The Dreadnought had proven itself to be more than just a weapon, it was a symbol of humanity's newfound power. The Overlords, for all their arrogance, had been humbled. And Steele, ever the strategist, knew that this victory was only the beginning. Humanity's rise had just begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Steele stood at the helm, his eyes scanning the vast expanse of space where the Overlord's forces once stood strong. Now wreckage floated in silence, a testament to the devastation wrought by the Dreadnought. As his crew maintained their precise formation, Steele's thoughts drifted back to the origins of their rise. It hadn't always been like this. Humanity, once considered weak and fragile in a galaxy of superior species, had secretly been preparing for the day they would no longer be ignored. Years ago, Earth's leaders had recognized the vulnerability of their position. They knew that survival in a galaxy dominated by powerful empires required more than just diplomacy and negotiation. Humanity needed an edge, something that would make any potential invader think twice. The Dreadnought was the answer to that existential threat, but it hadn't come into existence overnight. It was the product of years of quiet advancement, hidden from prying eyes, developed in secret labs deep beneath Earth's surface and in space stations that floated far from populated areas. It had started with a single, audacious idea: use what their enemies had against them. When the first alien species made contact with Earth, humanity saw not just an existential risk but an opportunity. The Overlords and other empires had underestimated human tenacity and ingenuity. They believed their superior technology would always place them at the top. But humanity saw those technologies as blueprints for something greater. They reverse-engineered every piece of alien tech they could get their hands on. Every encounter, every skirmish, every scrap of metal became a building block for the weapon that would change their fate. Steele had been at the forefront of this transformation. He remembered the long nights and secret briefings, reviewing the experimental designs that would eventually become the Dreadnought. Each step forward was a leap in innovation, combining human creativity with alien technology. They didn't just mimic what they learned, they improved upon it. The result was a warship so advanced, so lethal, that even the most dominant species in the galaxy couldn't detect it, let alone stop it. The Dreadnought itself was more than just a ship, it was the embodiment of humanity's survival instincts. Its core systems were built using technology far beyond anything the Overlords could comprehend. The propulsion systems allowed it to travel undetected across vast stretches of space, while its weaponry, enhanced by alien designs, could obliterate fleets in moments. But its most powerful attribute wasn't the hardware. It was the unpredictability that came with human ingenuity. Alien technology was rigid, predictable, built on centuries of refined tradition. Human creativity, on the other hand, had no limits. This unpredictability made humanity's weapons dangerous in ways the Overlords had never encountered. Back in the present, the Overlords were realizing this too late. As their fleets disintegrated around the human warship, fear began to set in. Their advanced fleets, their unstoppable weapons, none of it mattered. The Dreadnought had torn through them with brutal efficiency, and now, the Overlords faced a new reality. No amount of strategy or conventional firepower could save them. Some of their leaders called for a retreat, their confidence shattered. Others, clinging to pride, argued that surrender was not an option. They still believed, somehow, that they could turn the tide. But deep down, the Overlords knew they were outmatched. And worse, this human ship might only be the beginning. That thought terrified them more than anything. If this single warship could cripple their mightiest fleets, what could an entire human armada accomplish? The Overlords' fears were amplified when Steele finally addressed them. With a simple, calculated statement, he shattered any remaining hope they had. The Dreadnought, he revealed, was just a small part of humanity's military force. The Overlords had been so fixated on the single ship that they hadn't even considered what might lie beyond it. Steele's message wasn't just a warning, it was a declaration. Humanity had been preparing for this moment, and their rise was far from over. As the Overlord's command structure broke down, Steele gave the order to unveil the Dreadnought's ultimate weapon. It had remained dormant up until now, a final card to be played when the Overlords believed they still had a chance. With a calm, unwavering voice, Steele issued the command. The Dreadnought's supercharged cannon came online, its energy readings spiking beyond anything the Overlords had ever encountered. In an instant, the Dreadnought's most powerful weapon fired. The beam of energy it unleashed was not just a strike against the Overlord's flagship, it was a statement. The flagship, the pride of the Overlord fleet, disintegrated on impact, vanishing in a blinding flash of light. The Overlords, stunned into silence, watched in horror as the remnants of their last hopes scattered into the void. Their most powerful warship had been erased from existence in a single shot. The message was clear. The Dreadnought was not just a ship, it was a harbinger of humanity's dominance. Its technology, a perfect fusion of human innovation and alien power, was beyond anything the Overlords could combat. The galaxy's power balance had shifted irreversibly. There was no going back. As the dust settled, Steele did not revel in the destruction. He had done what needed to be done. Now, it was time for the galaxy to understand the full implications of what had transpired. With a single broadcast, Steele addressed the entire galaxy, leaving no room for misinterpretation. Humanity would no longer be dismissed or underestimated. They had spent centuries preparing, advancing, and now they had the power to reshape the galaxy. Those who sought to challenge them would face the full might of their military force. Steele's message was not a threat. It was a promise. Humanity's rise was only beginning, and anyone who underestimated them from here on out would suffer the same fate as the Overlords. The Dreadnought, still hovering above the ruins of the Overlord's fleet, served as a reminder of what humanity was capable of. It was not just a symbol of their newfound power, it was a warning to any who thought they could stand in humanity's way. With the Overlords in disarray and the galaxy watching in stunned silence, the Dreadnought began to move once again. Its mission was complete, but its presence would be felt long after it departed. Humanity had announced its arrival on the galactic stage, and the universe would never forget the day a human Dreadnought entered the space of the mighty Overlords and left them broken in its wake. The battle was over, and the once mighty Overlords' empire lay in ruins. Their once vaunted fleets, the cornerstone of their dominance across countless star systems, had been decimated. What remained of their military was scattered, disorganized, and broken. Their command structure, once thought unshakable, was in utter disarray. The Overlords, who had ruled through fear and overwhelming technological superiority for so long, were now the ones living in fear. They knew full well that any attempt to regroup or retaliate would be met with total destruction. Humanity had proven, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that they were now a force to be reckoned with. The shockwaves of their defeat rippled through the galaxy. No one had expected this outcome. The Overlords, the galaxy's apex rulers, had been brought to their knees by a species they had long ignored. The leaders of the Overlords, once feared and revered, had no choice but to surrender. Their final act of defiance had been crushed with such brutal efficiency that even the most prideful among them saw no path forward. In the aftermath of the battle, they had no cards left to play. Their fleets were gone, their planetary defenses obliterated, and their allies, who had once stood by them in moments of conflict, had either fled or gone silent. Humanity, on the other hand, stood tall. The Dreadnought, the terrifying ship that had torn through the Overlords' defenses with ease, remained as a symbol of their newfound power. As news of the Overlord's surrender spread across the galaxy, empires, small and large, were forced to confront a new reality. The era of the Overlords was over. In its place, a new power had emerged, one that had the strength and technology to challenge the galaxy's status quo. For the Overlords, the humiliation was unbearable. Their empire, which had stretched across multiple star systems for millennia, had collapsed in the span of a single encounter. Their people, who had once lived in comfort and security, were now left vulnerable and fearful. They knew that humanity's vengeance could be swift if provoked. With their military in ruins, there was nothing left to defend them. The once great empire was reduced to a shadow of its former self, clinging to survival in a galaxy that had turned against them. But humanity, as it turned out, had no interest in further conquest. With the battle won, Commander Steele made his intentions clear to the galaxy. Addressing all who were listening, Steele declared that humanity sought peace. Their intention had never been to conquer or subjugate. However, he made one thing perfectly clear: humanity would respond to aggression with overwhelming force. The message was simple and powerful. If any other empire thought they could challenge humanity, they would suffer the same fate as the Overlords. This declaration sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Humanity, once considered weak and irrelevant, had emerged as a dominant power, and their words carried weight. The Dreadnought, now a symbol of their technological prowess, was proof of what they were capable of. Empires that had previously dismissed humanity were now forced to reconsider their stance. Some, fearing that they might be next on humanity's list, quickly sought diplomatic relations. Others, though wary, began to reevaluate their alliances with the Overlords, realizing that aligning with a fallen empire would only lead to their downfall. As the human Dreadnought departed from Overlord space, the galaxy was left in a state of uncertainty. No one knew what humanity's next move would be, but one thing was certain: they were no longer the insignificant species they had once been. The Dreadnought's departure wasn't a retreat, it was a statement. Humanity had won their battle and secured their position, but they would not rest on their laurels. Steele's calm and calculated approach to war had left the galaxy with one lingering thought: if this was what humanity could achieve with a single ship, what else did they have in store? Former allies of the Overlords, once bound to the Empire through fear or mutual benefit, were now left to fend for themselves. Many of them, realizing that the Overlords could no longer protect them, quickly began severing ties, looking for new alliances. They had seen the destruction the Dreadnought had brought, and none were eager to provoke humanity's wrath. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted dramatically, and with the Overlord's empire in shambles, a vacuum of power had formed. Some saw an opportunity to rise in the ranks, while others sought to stay out of humanity's way. Behind closed doors, other empires began discussing how they could protect themselves from this new, unpredictable force. They had seen the human Dreadnought in action and knew that no conventional fleet could stand against it. But what they feared most was not the technology itself, it was the possibility that humanity had more secrets hidden away. The Dreadnought was just one ship. How many more like it were waiting in the shadows, ready to strike if provoked? Steele's final broadcast to the galaxy was both a warning and a promise. He reminded the galaxy's empires that humanity had been underestimated once, and it would not happen again. They had risen to the challenge, adapted, and overcome. Now they were a key player in the galaxy's future, and they expected to be treated as such. The Dreadnought was a demonstration of their capabilities, but it was also a reminder that humanity had no intentions of returning to the days when they were ignored or dismissed. As the Dreadnought vanished into deep space, leaving behind the wreckage of the Overlords' defeat, the galaxy was left to ponder its next steps. Humanity had shown its strength, but the full extent of their capabilities remained a mystery. What other advancements had they made in secret? What other weapons were hidden away, waiting for the right moment to be revealed? The Overlords' defeat was a testament to humanity's determination and resilience, but it was also a stark reminder that the galaxy was now entering a new era, one in which humanity could not be ignored. The lingering fear of what humanity might do next permeated every corner of the galaxy. Empires, once confident in their superiority, now questioned their own security. For the first time in millennia, the future was uncertain. The Overlords were gone, their reign ended in a single decisive blow, and humanity had risen to take their place among the galaxy's most powerful. But what came next would be determined not by the empires of old, but by a species that had once been seen as nothing more than an afterthought.